and it is approximately...
Are you familiar with this program?
Familiar, it's on Terra Road. It's approximately 11:12 morning on Sunday, the 22nd day of January 2023. We're here with Mr. Adrian Bean. Mr. Bean, is your name spelled K-D-R-I-A-N-B-E-A-N?
Yes, sir.
And can we just have your phone number for this recording?
404-380-0730. The date of birth, please. 06/22/1979.
And Mr. Bean, do we have permission to record this?
42 years old.
Do we have permission to record the conversation?
Sir.
Okay. As you know, as I just said, I represent Mr. Williams, Mr. Jeffery Williams on trial right now. Young Thug is his performing name. Jim Martin Jr. and I work together. Jim Martin Jr. is an investigator, a licensed investigator. And I just want to go over what you told us previously and make sure this is accurate. If it is not accurate, all I want, like I told you before, is the truth. That's all I want. You were in I'm not saying you were every day, but you were in a situation involving a good friend of yours, a very close person to you, named Dirty Red, with Mr. Walter Murphy and Mr. Fred Prethro, and Walter Murphy is also known as DK. I mean, it's what you told me. Is that correct?
Correct.
And I'm telling you the date. I'm not saying you remember, but we're talking about this the 11th day of September 2013. So September 11th, everyone knows, but it's 2013. And there's a shooting and a car that creams into a side of a laundromat. You know what I'm talking about?
I'm familiar with it.
Okay. Now, you were never charged with that, or you were never prosecuted for that case. Is that true?
Yes, sir. We didn't ever even go through the motions on that. So,
and what happened with your charge? It was...
the case was dismissed.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
The whole case was totally dismissed.
Okay. Now, I'm interested in Jeffery Williams. Young Thug. Was he in, around, participant, giving direction, anything involved in that event that we're talking about involving Dirty Red in September 11, 2013?
No, sir. Okay. Like I explained, when, all that occurred, everything took place, they was, trying to force him in on something that he wasn't even in. Like I said, I'm not going to lie on the brother. You know what I mean? And, he wasn't with us. Young Thug was not in the car with us that day. I don't even know how his name really got mentioned. Maybe it was a lot of hype through the streets. Or, I might have was in confidence talking and said his name, but I ain't, him and Linda saying that he was with us. You know what I'm saying?
And when you say that they wanted him involved in the case or whatever your words were, who was they?
Detectives and other, people that was inquiring. You know what I'm saying? I don't know, discuss the neighborhood or whatever.
The police?
Yeah, police.
The authorities or whatever, the prosecutors, the police?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I played for you a recording a short while ago, and this too. And I promise you I'll email it to you, the second one, and I will. But the one I played for you has you and your wife speaking, and at some point around the 11-minute mark, you said they gave us a story to tell. Remember hearing that?
Yes, sir.
And can you tell us what that meant?
They was really telling us to, hey, put Doug in on this right here. If you don't put him on that, you could be facing a lot of time and all type of shit like that. You know what I mean?
And who is they again? I know.
At the point.
Okay. And the other prosecutors and police?
It was just really just him, and it was just really him I had dealt with.
Okay.
There was a few more officers that was just around, you know what I'm saying? We was in the hospital.
You're in the what?
I was in the hospital, you know what I mean, when shit happened. So it's like they pushed in and I was out there. I'm really, I don't know what's going on. So,
yeah, as far as
accident.
Right. The car, they say.
We crashed.
Yeah, careened over a police car and into the side of the building.
Right.
And you were driving the car.
I was the driver.
Okay.
And he said, so I said he was driving.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
the police wanted you to say
you had to get up.
That's what you did.
Young Thug was not in the vehicle with us.
Did he have anything to do with it?
It had nothing to do with none of that. Can't no man, I'm 42 years old, can't no other man tell me what to do. Can't no other man make no other man tell no other man what they need. Everybody wrong.
So why did you tell the police, because I'm recording, that Jeffery Williams was involved in this robbery because the police told you to say that so you get out of trouble? Is that the reason?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you're also on another jail call, the one I'm going to send you.
That's the one I want to hear. You know,
I'm going to send it to you. But for what you say, the reason you would have a jail call with your wife and a friend of yours or whoever, you're going to tell us, that's because the same reason. It's just the police gave you something, a story to tell you. It's going to say it to everybody. Okay. All right. We're going to shut the recording. It's what you told us the truth, because that's all I've ever asked you for.
That's it.
All right. Did anyone promise anything, threaten you?
Nobody probably will.
And Jimmy and I have been straight. Investigator Martin and I have been straight with you all the way. Is that true? Right. And Investigator Charles Millsap.
I've been working hard trying to catch up with her. I work hard too. I just started working 2 jobs, so you know I'm at work working day and night. So you know, appreciate you. Certified flagger, certified supervisor. You know what I mean? And I was doing dishwashing at night. So you know what I mean? I'm real whoop to be going in 23 to be going through anything that got something to do with court of law or anything like that. I'm real whoop for that.
And just because it's going to come up, you did go to prison for 3 years, got intended to do 3.
Right.
But I know what you explained, but just explain again what truly happened. I know you took a break.
I don't even know. When we went into court, me, Walsh Murphy, and I think one day we come to court and they said, case dismissed, said the victim had killed himself or something like that. So I'm like, you don't got a victim.
I'm talking about your other case. Why you went to, yeah.
But that had something to do with my children. They ain't got nothing.
But your children were no. I want to be fair to you.
Explain what happened. What happened with my kids was I had a Polaroid. You had a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old that was choked. One of them was punched in the stomach, which was my kids. And I went around there and held with the guy calling it by myself. And I got caught up in it, and I explained to the judge what happened, and the judge sentenced me to 10 years.
And you caught up with the person that you killed?
Yeah, I shot both of the guys that, in the midst of.
And how old were they?
The one was 28, and the other one was 31. They was jumping on a 10-year, 12-year-old by their basketball goal in the neighborhood, which was my kids. Right. So, everything that went on me, it happened with me and my kids. You know what I'm saying? It had nothing to do with none of that.
And then, last thing, and I'm sorry that you went through that and your children. Right. YSL. Are you ever part? They're saying YSL is a criminal street gang. Are you ever part of a criminal street gang, YSL?
No, sir.
Do you know Jeffery Williams to ever commit a crime? Ever?
No, sir.
You only know him through his music and his reputation.
Only time I ever heard of him, on the radio. You know what I mean? Through our neighborhood, you know what I'm saying? I don't got no issue with him. I don't hang with him. We live in 2 different separate places.
Okay, and whatever happened, and I understand it was dismissed, but on September 11, 2013, as far as you're concerned, that had nothing to do with criminal street gang activity. Why, sir? Okay.
No, sir. I ain't initiated that. I mean, like I said, I don't got no tattoos, no men, no sign. Ain't on my body that'll make me, nothing around me, period. Is it okay? I'm a working man. Is it okay if I turn the tape off? Unless Brian has another question.
I'm just going to announce the time.
Okay, it is now 11:20 a.m.
And we're going to, we're at the Kroger's. Is it your name? The Kroger is your name, right? You're,
January 22nd, 2023. I still repeat, man, Young Thug on Tower. Young Thug was not in any vehicle with me. Never gave me no permission to do no crime. I'm way over than Young Thug. He never directed you to commit any criminal activity whatsoever.
You know him as a good person?
I ain't never heard a guy do nothing crazy. He take care of his neighborhood, he take care of his family. You know what I mean? The street, everybody want to be against the man. You know what I'm saying? So you know how I go. When you in the streets, you making money, rich, you doing your thing with music, you got the blood and stuff, and you take their name and put it on what you got going on, and just be, have life. A lot of rappers, you know what I'm saying? They make it be a game, but it's not a game. I'm over here doing good political stuff. You don't see me in the neighborhood, fumbling around in the neighborhood. I'm in the studio. Right. You Man, make it worse. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, that was like 10 years ago. When they talk about me and this guy here. Guy just killed himself. That should be over with, man. You know what I mean? The victim killed himself.
Not over with, but we appreciate it. All right, thank you so much. We're going to shut the recording off.
It is now. It is 11. Keep going off the time. Let me 11:22 a.m. Cutting it off.
So, Your Honor, that is the entirety of the conversation that has been provided to us. The court heard the interaction between the defendant, Brian Steele, and Mr. Bean. Mr. Bean, when asked, I know based on the conversation we heard that there was some conversation that he and Mr. Steele had outside of this. Of course, on redirect, we can ask that question. What was told? What were you told to say? Was there anything you were told to say? But I think it's important to note at one point during his cross-examination, do you remember them explaining that they, meaning the detectives, tried to force Jeffery Williams or Young Thug into it? Do you remember saying that? Mr. Bean said, I think that was something you said, right? So all throughout this 10-minute recording, we hear Mr. Steele leading Mr. Bean, putting words out there, Mr. Bean acquiescing to what is being said. But the only thing regarding a statement that Mr. Bean tells Brian Steele, true or false, the only thing he says about a statement that he gave anybody was that they said they're trying to put Thug in here. And if you don't do this, you're going to be facing a lot of time and all that shit. And Brian Steele said, who is they again? And Mr. Bean said, Detective Quinn. And then Brian Steele said, no other prosecutors or police? And Adrian Bean repeats, no, it was just Detective Quinn. In the interview with Detective Quinn starts that recording before he ever even approaches Adrian Bean. And that happens on September 17th, 2013. That's 4 days after the incident occurred, long after Mr. Bean had been released from the hospital. And he was released from Grady detention around 6:30. And he was not put in the jail at 12 o'clock midnight on September the 12th. The first thing you hear Detective Quinn saying is something akin to, I'm Detective Quinn, have we met? And Adrian Bean never says, yeah, remember I talked to you yesterday or day before, some other time. And Adrian Bean, in his conversation with Detective Quinn back in 2013, he says, yeah, I told them at first. And the reference that he is making based on everything that is around this conversation is that while he was on the scene, he told them someone else was driving. Mr. Steele's question to Adrian Bean, why did you tell the detective at the hospital, Grady Hospital, on September 11, 2013, that it was not you, but your dear friend driving that Nissan vehicle? That's so wrong on so many levels. Number one, he is injecting stuff, assertions to the jury that doesn't exist, manufacturing evidence. What he should have done was ask Mr. Bean whether or not he spoke with someone at the hospital. He can lead him. He can say, you spoke with the detective at the hospital, right? Because that's all that's in this interview that we have between him and Mr. Bean. You spoke with the detective at the hospital, right? And that detective was Detective Quinn, right? Well, if he says, I don't know, I don't remember, then he can confront him with the inconsistent statement, which is, didn't you tell me and Investigator Martin that you talked to Detective Quinn at the hospital? He can say yes or he can say no. And then he can play the statement that he talked to Detective Quinn at the hospital. What he cannot do is assert as if it is fact, why did you tell the detective at the hospital, Grady Hospital, on September 11, 2013, that it was not you, but your dear friend driving that Nissan vehicle? He never says that. Mr. Bean never says that in this interview with him. So Mr. Steele is sitting here conveying to the court as if he doesn't realize that he is impermissibly injecting facts that are not in evidence before this jury. Like what, Judge? Mr. Steele's been doing this twice, 3 times as long as a lot of us in this courtroom. He knows what he is doing, and it is disingenuous for him to suggest that he is innocently, impermissibly putting facts in front of the jury that don't exist. He says, when I object about that and say there are no facts in evidence, there will be no statement put into evidence, so object. The court asked Mr. Steele, did he make that statement? Mr. Steele refers to the court. He says, yes. And then the court asked to see it. Mr. Steele says, yes, sir. And didn't produce it. Even today, he hasn't given anything to the court that shows where Adrian Bean said any of these things that he's asserting that he said in his questions to him.
Well, I think he's given me these statements in terms of Williams, Charlie and Delta. And I will also want to say that he also...
And Your Honor...
Hang tight. And also the radio and traffic that was played from, or at least proffered from my consideration, Williams 202 and 203. And the recorded interview of Bean and Detective Quinn. So, I mean, I think he's got some basis to ask some of these questions. Now, I would agree with you that maybe some of the questions are objectionable in terms of their form and or substance. But
Judge, the defendants exhibit 1 and 2, or C and D, or whatever he called them. Tracy Lewis's report. Literally, Your Honor, the court has Delta being the draft, the partial draft. He has sat here and literally asserted that something
Delta's
is whited out. If you compare
we don't know what happened to it.
But Your Honor, the point is that Mr. Steele is trying to use that as a basis for impermissibly injecting before this jury speculation, conjecture, and assertions as fact in his questions to Mr. Bean. If you compare the two, it is literally the first draft of the final draft. You have Tracy Lewis writing this entire statement, which is defendant Charlie, and you can see the paragraphs are literally the same. She started it on this, and just because we gave them everything is no, I mean, just he's going to exploit it, I guess, to his game, whatever way he can do it. But Judge, it's literally Charlie is the complete report. Delta is the partial report. And the only person that Tracy Lewis speaks to in this report, and in Detective Quinn's report, he references that Tracy Lewis spoke with Walter Murphy, and she made a report of her conversation. And in his report, Detective Quinn also knows that Detective Calhoun spoke with Frederick Prothro, and he made an audio recording of his conversation.
Okay, but let's focus on what Mr. Steele has a belief of. Okay, I think that he has more than kind of tendered why it is he asks these questions now. I think that part of your objections are valid, but I think that he is more than proffered as an advocate before this court that he had a good faith basis to ask some of this. Now, you have a disagreement as to why and how, but...
And Judge, that is the only disagreement that I have. I don't care if he says, did you talk to a detective at the hospital? That's the point I'm making. I don't care if he says, did you lie? I don't care if he says, did you talk to your wife on an unrecorded line? I don't care if he does that. But what he does is says, why did you tell your wife on an unrecorded line at the hospital? So that necessarily assumes a fact that is not in evidence. He's sitting here telling you, I don't know, maybe there's a statement. I don't know. The court hasn't given it to me.
Now that I've heard a little more, I think that would be more appropriate. I would probably sustain that objection. It probably needs to be clarified.
He did it throughout, Your Honor. he did it. There's a total of 28 times where he does something like that. Literally, he says, "Do you remember explaining that what you were referring to is at the hospital, that the police were telling us to lie, put thug in it when you talked to Detective Lewis?"
Okay, but that's.
So when he says, "Do you remember a thing that there's no evidence took place," he is asserting that, one, it took place, and then asking the witness improperly in front of the jury.
Did he ever talk to Detective Lewis?
No, that's just what I'm telling you, Your Honor. And then Mr. Steele gets here and says to you all this stuff and still never shows you anything to suggest that Adrian Bean talked to Detective Lewis.
Okay. Mr. Steele, you want to respond to that? Because that's critical to me. I mean, it's critical in the sense that if there was no conversation between the two of them, then that would assume facts not in evidence. Hold on. I'm asking Mr. Steele a question now. Just hold on, Ms. Love. Okay.
On the recording that you just heard at the beginning, the first couple of minutes, I don't have the time in front of me, it was not shown on the screen. Mr. Bean said when he spoke with the detectives or the authorities, whatever his words are, at the hospital. That's what he says.
Okay, but here's her beef. If you'd have said, "Who'd you talk to?" And he said, "I talked to the detective." Well, was it Detective Lewis? Was it Detective Quinn? Was it Detective whoever? What I think that the question assumes is he did in fact talk to Detective Lewis, and he didn't.
I don't know if that's true.
Well,
I'm not conceding that.
Well, I'm going to tell you that I haven't heard anything that would indicate that's truth.
Yeah, well,
you have a good faith basis to ask that.
You haven't heard anything of who he spoke with. That's my point.
That's the point.
But you all can't. But you two, neither one of you can proffer that.
Judge.
It's not proper, Mr. Steele.
No. Listen.
It's not. It would be a violation before me for you to put that in front of this jury.
You're not letting me finish. In the September 17, 2000.
You were saying to the court that you have a belief that there is another statement out there. There's not.
How would you say that?
Because it hasn't been brought up. If it gets brought up, then we'll correct it at that point in time. But right now, I'm going to direct you not to inquire that line. You don't have a basis to do so.
Not true.
Well, go ahead and make a statement and see what happens.
Your Honor, listen.
Go ahead and make the statement in contravention to what I've just told you, and I'm telling you that you will have some problems in front of me.
I'm trying to articulate to you.
You have told me everything at this point. You have told me that there's got to be a statement. Now, if you find the statement, I will, one, apologize to you. Two, I will take corrective action. That's probably not going to be nice to anybody. But at this point, there's nothing for me to do other than if you don't have a good faith basis to do it, you can't ask the question.
Honor, listen. There is a recording between Detective Quinn and Adrian Bean where Adrian Bean says, "I lied to your..."
But we don't know what he lied about.
He says he lied about who he's talking about, the car.
But we still don't know whether or not he had a conversation with Detective Lewis.
And I made it clear. It's 10 years ago.
But you said you had, in your conversation with Detective Lewis, that's what you proffer.
I said, or any other detective or law enforcement. Read the transcript. I made it clear. I don't know. He doesn't remember names. He says it was Detective Quinn. Also, on the recording, on Sunday, January 22, 2023, Mr. Bean is the one who said this happened in the hospital. Your Honor, I'm the one complaining about I don't have the statement. I've been asking for it. This is Brady. Clearly there was a statement made.
We don't, but we don't know if there's a statement. You're supposing there's a statement, okay? And there may be. And you know what I said? And you know what I said earlier? I said if there is Brady that's not disclosed, then that particular individual is going to have some problems with me. I told you that already. Or I have a lot of different remedies I can execute at that point in time.
There has to be. That's why I gave you.
But you can't intimate or otherwise cross over the line when you don't have the statement to back it up.
Judge, I've been robbed of the statement.
But we don't know where the statement is. If we find the statement or it comes up or in cross-examination, Quinn brings up and says, hey, happen to have a statement right here in my massive file. And if he does, then of course I will revisit this particular subject again.
I'm saying it's been deleted. It's been destroyed.
We don't know. You don't know. We don't know what happened. We don't know what happened. We had the same issue that happened earlier in this trial about a statement. We don't know whether or not it was the hack or whether or not it's intentional. Now you can make whatever hay you want out of it. I mean, and the jury can decide for what they want to give it. But you cannot ask the question in its current form. You just can't.
Your Honor, I'm not asking any questions, but you have to understand the following, please. 6 days later, Detective Quinn and Adrian Bean are on recording where Adrian Bean tells Detective Quinn, I lied.
About what?
I lied.
About what?
Who was driving the car. He gets cut off. Detective Quinn says, yeah, tell me about it. Where's that statement? That's what I've been asking for.
But that doesn't still give you the latitude at this point in time to ask that question. Now, I told you, if we find out from Quinn, and I'm telling the state that if I find out that the statement exists, there's going to be a lot of unhappy people.
Well, what if you don't find out it exists? I still am entitled to. That's my whole point.
Okay, but here's the thing. You've asked me for it. I've asked them. If it comes up later, or I find out it's sitting someplace that was in possession of the state, pursuant to case law and definition, then we'll have some problems.
I understand, but you're asking when you have to find the statement for. I'm telling you the statement was made.
It doesn't work that way, Mr. Steele. I'm sorry.
It does work that way.
No, it does not.
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't. And you haven't presented any case law to tell me how to do that. And I'm telling you, as the judge presiding over this case, if you do that, it's misconduct.
I'm not doing anything.
I'm telling you right now.
I don't know what you're telling me. I'm not.
I am telling you, you have no good faith basis to this point in time to ask that question right now, or to intimate that.
I didn't ask any question. You are listening to Deterring Love. I'm ready to cross-examine. I'm going to play the recording you just heard. This gentleman tells me on recording that he was at the hospital speaking with law enforcement. I want that. It is backed up because on recording, 6 days after the crash into that side of the building, Your Honor, Detective Quinn and Mr. Bean are talking about the statement that Mr. Bean made prior. I don't have it. And when the court asked me, well, you got to find it, or if I find it, it wasn't given over.
Then we'll have some problems. Then we'll have some issues.
I have some issues now. I've been begging for it. The state's supposed to give this.
Hold on, Mr. Okay, stop for a second. Ms. Love, have you inquired of Detective Quinn where this other statement may be?
Judge, that's just it. Mr. Steele is literally manufacturing evidence. There is no other statement. I have asked whether or not there was a statement. I asked Tracy Lewis at the hospital. Let me be real clear, because he keeps conflating stuff. Adrian Bean never told Detective Quinn that he made a statement at the hospital. I have his transcript.
Okay, but we don't know where he made the statement, and also he's lied. So we don't know what he lied about either. Your
Honor, to be very clear, there's no statement. I have asked Detective Lewis. They can ask Detective Lewis. She never talked to him. Okay. Detective Quinn, who is the only person, it's not just police, the only person Adrian Bean asserts to Brian Steele in this recording that he gave us, this 10-minute recording, he said, I spoke to Detective Quinn. It's obvious that he didn't speak to Detective Quinn at the hospital, because the first time he met Detective Quinn was September 17th when he pulls him in for the interview. Literally, Mr. Steele is manufacturing something. So when the court is even asking me, okay, do you know where this statement is? Assuming that there's not a statement. There is no statement. There's no evidence. That's the problem with Mr. Steele asking questions the way that he asked them. He is assuming facts that are not in evidence. And he is usurping the jury's province and their ability to discern and weigh evidence because he is injecting assertions into his questions about things that don't exist. Similarly, he says, do you recall explaining that you made calls from the Fulton County jail that you knew were being recorded to support your lie to the police that Jeffery was involved on September 11, 2013? That's what he asked the witness. You heard the interview. He doesn't say that anywhere in that interview. This is the kind of manufactured evidence Mr. Steele keeps putting in front of the jury. He never said that during the interview, yet that's the question. That's the question Mr. Steele asked Adrian Bean on the stand. Nothing like that ever happened. And his conversation during his cross-examination of Adrian Bean, the cross-examination is replete with examples just like that. There is no statement. He can't sit there and say there has to be a statement and then ask the question as if there is one, because that's improperly asserting to the jury something that isn't factual. There's no evidence of it. So to answer the court's question, of course we have asked who spoke to whom. Did Tracy Lewis, did you speak to Adrian Bean? Tracy Lewis, I talked to Walter Murphy, and I put it in my report. I made a report of that. Calhoun, did you talk to Adrian Bean? I talked to Frederick Prothro. Here's my recording of that. Detective Quinn, and then this idea of destruction of evidence, that is the fallacy that is getting thrown around. That's the problem with asserting facts not in evidence. That's the problem with them being allowed to ask those kind of questions. Do you destroy evidence? Nobody has said anyone destroyed any evidence. Eduardo Navarro Flores said he heard that Detective Quinn had erased the interview. Well, then why all throughout Detective Quinn's report does he refer to the lie that Eduardo told in the first place? How is that destroying evidence? But they're trying to create a narrative for the jury of things that don't exist. A narrative that somehow the state destroys evidence. There's been no evidence, no suggestion that the state has destroyed any evidence, but they're going to ask it a million times. So that's what Mr. Steele is doing with this whole statement at the hospital. He's going to ask it a million times. So the jury's sitting there going, well, where is it? And then in the end, $100 says that he gets up there and says, they destroyed the statement from the hospital, knowing he has no evidence that one even exists. With Detective Lewis, and certainly not Detective Quinn, who is the only person Adrian Bean tells Mr. Steele, at least in the portion of the recorded interview he gave me. I don't know what else he told. I don't know what Mr. Steele told Adrian Bean. But it's obvious that he's leading him through the interview that the court heard. And even being led, Adrian Bean does not let up on his assertion about Detective Quinn. Mr. Steele tries to get him to change it. You mean somebody else, other police, no, just Detective Quinn. So this idea that he has a right to ask questions that assume things that are not in evidence, that he has not put in evidence, that he cannot expect to be put in evidence, is ludicrous. And to assert that the state is trying to hide something because he wants to taint the jury's mind, taint the fact finders with falsehoods, and somehow, I guess that's the way he wins cases. I don't know. But, Your Honor, I'm flabbergasted. The number of times he asked Adrian Bean questions that assumed facts that are not in evidence is just staggering. It's just staggering. I'm simply asking that Mr. Steele be precluded from asking those kind of questions. And Your Honor, I'm asking that any reference to statements made at the hospital in the manner that he has asked them, that assume that there was one, be stricken, and that the court instructs the jury that there is no evidence of any statement made at the hospital to a Detective Lewis. And then let them weigh whether or not a statement was given to Detective Quinn. But that's not the question that Mr. Steele asked.
I pondered the issue. What I'm going to do is the questions that have been asked so far about the hospital, I believe those would be presuming facts, not evidence. There are some questions that Mr. Steele has asked on his interview that would be appropriate and are appropriate. But in terms of the hospital questions thus far, those need to be clarified in front of our jury at this point. Excuse me?
What clarification?
No, meaning that I'm going to strike them from the record at this point in time. They can be until there's a basis for me to go ahead and consider them.
Judge, I am still on cross-examination. This man tells me.
The state's made an objection. The objection they've made continually is assuming facts, not in evidence. They're not those facts aren't in evidence.
Judge, it's on recording. Mr. Bean said it. You just heard. I know you only heard it one time. We can play it again. He said this happened at the hospital. You are striking. You are going to be commenting on the evidence. You are going to be doing 17-857. This is for the jury to determine. This is what he told me on that record. It's on recording. He said this happened at the hospital. Talking about when he spoke to the detective.
He said that, or that was his question upon you asking it?
I've never mentioned a hospital. If you don't mind, just listen to it again. It's like the first 2 or 3 minutes.
I'll listen to it again. Let me hear it again.
Yes, Your Honor. And while we're pulling that up.
Okay, I got it on. Go ahead.
This is Ryan Steele. I'm giving out investigating Jimmy Martin Jr. We represent Mr. Jeffery, also known as Young Thug. We're standing in Kroger. Look at the address. And it is approximately...
Are you familiar with this Kroger? Yes, on Terra Road.
It's approximately 11:12 morning on Sunday, the 22nd day of January 2023. We're here with Mr. Adrian Bean. Mr. Bean, is your name spelled Adrian?
Yes, sir.
And can we just have your phone number for the recording?
44380-0730. The date of birth, please. 06/22/1979.
And Mr. Bean, do we have permission to record this?
42 years old.
Do we have permission to record the conversation?
Sir.
Okay. As you know, as I just said, I represent Mr. Williams, Mr. Jeffery Williams on file right now. Young Thug is his performing name. Jimmy Martin Jr. and I work together. Jimmy Martin Jr. is an investigator, a licensed investigator. And I just want to go over what you told us previously and make sure this is accurate. If it is not accurate, all I want, like I told you before, is the truth. That's all I want. You were in I'm not saying you were every day, but you were in a situation involving a good friend of yours, a very close person to you, named Dirty Red, with Mr. Walter Murphy and Mr. Fred Prethrow, and Walter Murphy is also known as DK. I mean, it's what you told me. Is that correct?
Correct.
And I'm telling you the date. I'm not saying you remember, but we're talking about is the 11th day of September 2013. So September 11th, everyone knows, but it's 2013. And there's a shooting and a car that creeps into a side of a laundromat. You know what I'm talking about?
I'm familiar with it.
Okay. Now, you were never charged with that account, or you were never prosecuted for that case. Is that true?
Yes, sir. We didn't ever even go through the motions on that. So,
and what happened with your charge? It was...
the case was dismissed.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
The whole case was totally dismissed.
Okay. Now, I'm interested in Jeffery Williams. Young Thug. Was he in, around, participant, giving direction, anything involved in that event that we're talking about involving Dirty Red in September 11, 2013?
No, sir. Okay. Like I explained, when, all that occurred, everything took place, they was, trying to force him in on something that he wasn't even in. Like I said, I'm not gonna lie on the brother. You know what I mean? And he wasn't with us, jumped over, not in the car with us that day. I don't even know how his name really got mentioned. Maybe it was a lot of hype through the streets, or I might have was in confidence talking and said his name, but I ain't, you know what I mean? Him and Linda saying that he was with us. You know what I'm saying?
And when you say that they wanted him involved in the case or whatever your words were, who is they?
Detectives and other, people that was inquiring. You know what I'm saying? I don't know, discuss the neighborhood or whatever.
The police?
Yeah, police.
The authorities or whatever, the prosecutors, the police?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I played for you a recording a short while ago, and this too. I promise you I'll email it to you, the second one, and I will. But the one I played for you has you and your wife speaking, and at some point around the 11-minute mark, you said they gave us a story to tell. Remember hearing that?
Yes, sir.
And can you tell us what that meant?
That they was really telling us to hey, put Doug in on this right here. You know what I mean? If you don't put him on that, you could be facing a lot of time and all type of shit like that. You know what I mean?
And who is they again? I know.
At the point.
Okay. And the other prosecutors and police?
It was really just him, and it was just really him I had dealt with.
Okay.
There was a few more officers that was just around, you know what I'm saying? We was in the hospital.
You're in the what?
I was in the hospital.
Stop. All right, run it back, please.
It's going to be about 4 minutes.
All right, let me hear it.
It was really him I had dealt with. Okay. There was a few more officers that was just around, you know what I'm saying? We was in the hospital.
Stop.
You're in the what?
I was in the hospital.
Stop. All right, Mr. Bean says we were in the hospital.
Yes, Your Honor, he says that we were in the hospital, but he does not say that he was, that he gave any statement to Detective Lewis at the hospital.
But that goes to weight. I mean, that goes to weight and sufficiency and what the jury wants to believe or don't believe. I mean, it's clear from it's clear now from listening to the tape again that Mr. Steele, that was not a production or a product of Mr. Steele's questioning. It was the witnesses saying, hey,
Judge,
we was at the hospital.
It was after that, because Mr. Bean, when he's talking, he's saying we were in the hospital. I was the victim. That's what he's. If the court will just listen to.
Okay, give me another 15 seconds.
You know what I mean? When shit happened, so it's like they push in, and I was like, I'm the victim. I don't know what's going on. So, yeah, as far as accident, right? The car, they say we crashed. Yeah, careened over a police car and into the side of the building. Right. And you were driving the car. I was the driver. Okay. And he even said, so I say he the driver. Yeah. You know what I mean? So the police wanted you to say, but that's what he done. So, but not in the vehicle with him. Did he have anything to do with it? Yeah, had nothing to do with none of that. Can't no man, I'm 42 years old, can't no other man tell me what to do. Can't no other man make no other man tell no other man what they need. Everybody wrong. So why did you tell the police, because I'm recording, that Jeffery Williams was involved in this armed robbery because the police told you to say that so you get out of trouble? Is that the reason? Yeah. Okay. Now, you're also on another jail called the one I'm going to send you. That's the one I want to hear. I'm going to send it to you. But for what you say, the reason you would have...
And so, Your Honor, when Mr. Steele says, do you remember the detective asking you questions about the incident involving the armed robbery of Mr. Dotson and almost killing police officer Robertson L. and striking the other police officers and careening over them and bailing into the wall and fleeing? Do you remember that? He says, no, sir. Then the question, do you remember telling that detective, specifically Detective Lewis, at that time, there were 3 people in the Nissan red Altima vehicle? That's nowhere in this statement. What Mr. Bean is doing at the point that the court just heard, he's saying one thing, and then he's saying, we were in the hospital over there. We were like the victims. We were laying there. Okay, but he's got a good faith basis because he's got a couple of different sources. He's got this interview. He's got the, let me get to it again. Hold on one second. He's got Williams 203, which is the radio traffic. He's got Williams 202, which is radio traffic. And he's got the interview of
of him and Detective Quinn, William C. and D. So so if he's got all those things, Ms. Love, he's got a good faith basis to ask those particular, because they're different source documents, but it doesn't take away from his ability to ask those questions because they are in fact things that but information he has that he can test.
Your Honor, what I'm saying is, in order to say something like, do you remember telling Detective Lewis at the time there were 3 people in the Nissan red vehicle, that when he says, do you remember, it's assuming that happened.
Oh,
he hasn't shown that it happened, he hasn't played anything, he hasn't laid a foundation for impeachment with that, he has nothing to say that happened. So he can't come back and show evidence of it. He's just saying it. Okay. And there's no evidence of it. He can argue it at the end, but he cannot put questions on a witness that assumes things that are not in evidence. And furthermore, when Mr. Steele is talking to him about the information, when he says the jail call, this is the killer. When he says, the part that the court just heard, I played you a recording a while ago. I promise you I'll email you the second one. The one I played for you has you and your wife speaking at some point around the 11-minute mark. They gave us a story to tell. What does that mean? And then Mr. Bean says, I don't know again what they talked about off recording. It's like they said put Thug in there. If you listen to this recording that they're talking about, Mr. Bean, and it is clear as day, Mr. Bean is chuckling with his wife over the fact that Walter Murphy and he said to the police that they're the victims. And that's the story. He said, I'm glad them boys kept it 100. I'm glad they kept it solid because they gave us a story to tell. Both Walter Murphy at the hospital said, we were getting robbed. In this jail call, Mr. Bean to his wife says, I told him, we were the ones getting robbed. That's what he's saying, and it's disingenuous for him to sit here and say, who told you? What did they mean? Was it the prosecutors, the police? Who told you that? Detective Quinn. No other prosecutors or police? No, Detective Quinn. And then when he says, we were in the hospital. I was in the hospital when that shit happened. We were the victim. The court heard him say it. Adrian Bean talks like this, and I would ask that the court allow us to enter the jail call that he's talking about so that the court has context to understand why it is so offensive that Mr. Steele is arguing that he gets to suggest to the jury things happen that didn't really happen in the form of his questions to Adrian Bean. So when he's saying, hey, they're telling us to lie, and he's saying, that's, what do you mean? They're saying put Thug in there. Well, what did you mean when you said they gave us a story to tell? Mr. Steele knows what they meant because he says it in the jail call. It's clear. So we can play that for the court. I can point to all of the times that Mr. Steele impermissibly asked questions that assume facts that are not in evidence. He's saying, do you remember stating that the driver was not you? There's nowhere in here that he says that the driver wasn't him. Literally. We just heard it. There's nowhere in here that says that. Now, if he asks this witness, you were the driver, weren't you? And at first you said you weren't the driver, weren't you? And then he says, well, didn't you say to X on this date at this time that you weren't the driver? Because guess what? He can then put forth X and show where he's lying. Right now, he's putting questions on the witness about things that don't exist. So there's no way anybody can test the witness's knowledge on them because they don't exist. That's all that I'm saying, Judge. Right. And that's what I'm asking that the court preclude the defendant from doing from here on out. And I will go through and present to the court. I will literally highlight all of the times that Mr. Steele asked those kind of questions. Do you remember? Why did you tell them this? There's nothing in the record where he told them anything. There's no evidence that has been presented. And Mr. Steele knew what he was doing. He intentionally didn't do it the right way and simply say, you said X, Y, Z. Or this happened, didn't it? I don't remember. But didn't you say X, Y, Z on this date? Instead, he just jumps right to, why'd you lie to the police? Those things are not proper. There's a way to do things, and he has not done them the proper way because he wants to put in the jury's mind facts that don't exist. And that is not the way a trial is done. That's not the way you get at the truth, by lying to the jury through your questions to a witness. And that's what he's done.
Okay. All right. Anything further, Mr. Steele?
I have absolutely nothing to say unless the court wants me to say something. It's just a continuation of the rants of the DA love.
And Your Honor, if
I didn't ask anybody to laugh in the gallery, okay? This is a courtroom, not some entertainment forum for you. Yes.
The insults again, if they're going to be called rants, I think we should recognize what we're doing when we stand up and go on and on with hysterics, as Mr. Steele has done. I'd ask that he be precluded from slaying insults as well.
All right. Well, both of you took professional responsibility when you were in law school, and that's not the way that we treat each other as professional colleagues. So I'll just leave you with that. All right.
I do one thing, and I didn't realize you're leaving.
No, I'm going to let I think I've been asked to take a comfort break, so I'm going to let everybody take comfort, and then I'll figure out what to do for the rest of the time. Okay. So we're going to take a comfort break first. We'll be in recess.